Warm evening. Thank God we have air conditioning in here.
Yes.
And I apologize for running a little late.
You want me to
We
hold
hope-
it? Just hold.
We hope to have a little presentation for you, but for some reason, computers aren't talking to each other. So we're just going to wing it here because we're already running a little bit late. So this is our second panel of our homeless encampment task force, of which myself, Joy Motz, and Mayor Pro Tem, and this is Lamar Thorpe, Councilman Lamar Thorpe, and we brought this forward last month to the rest of council and asked that they support us in this effort, and we formed this subcommittee and have been going out and gathering testimony on this growing problem, not only in Antioch, but in California, along the West Coast, and nationwide. We see this as not only a humanitarian issue, an economic development issue, but it's also a public safety issue too. So we are out here to gather testimony. What Lamar and I hope to do is, once we have this information and we speak to a lot of you, we'll have two more panels after this too. Two more panels after this. And then we'll be taking all this information and taking this back to council and doing a presentation to them at that time, and be looking at, addressing these issues and what we can possibly do in conjunction with other organizations and with the county as we look to try to tackle this problem. So thank you again for coming, and we'll start with, that's kind of opening remarks. You want to add anything, Lamar?
Welcome. Thank you. I'll only reiterate, I'll echo what Joy said, but I really want to commend Joy for pushing the council in this direction, because frankly, without Joy, we probably, many of us who are on the city council right now live in Southeast Antioch. And so it's been unfair for those who live north of Highway 4 and those who live in our southwest corridor by Delta Fair to be experiencing the things that they are. Meanwhile, we live in Southeast Antioch, where we drive through certain challenges, encampments, whatever it may be, but then at the end of the day, we get to go home. Joy gets to go home and literally walks out of her home and experiences some of the challenges that we're experiencing, that many of you see as you're working with what I would call many of our unhoused residents, because these are residents, whether anybody likes it or not.
Right. Right.
They vote. Some of them voted for me. Some of them voted for Joy. Whether we like it or not, some of them go to our local stores and buy things, meaning they're contributing to the tax base. And so homeless has a legal is a legal term and has a connotation to it, and so we're legally bound to that phrase. But we as elected officials are obligated to all of our residents. No one is exempt from what we're doing as a city. And then the governing that we provide for the city. Everybody experiences it in some form or another, and so that includes those who are not living in housing. So is that good?
Yes.
Good. So I had a presentation. Nancy Kaiser's printing the PowerPoint. It's only like 6 pages, nothing spectacular. But we just wanted to do an overview of where we've been and then where we're going. And for folks to understand the process, I think it's important to reiterate that, because I see in the world of social media that people who are not in this room, who will never want to come to one of these, have so much to say.
You got that right.
Have so much to say about what they think I'm going to do, or what they think Joy is going to do, or what they think your opinions may or may not be. But meanwhile, they never come to these meetings. And so I think it's important for them to understand that we're coming at this with an open mind. We haven't made any decisions. We're not a decision-making body. All we're doing is gathering information from the community. This is the third ad hoc committee that I've been a part of. And the first one I participated in was the ballot measures ad hoc committee, which was the brainchild of Measure W, which many of you voted for. And that process was centered around public engagement. So we did a whole public engagement campaign. It was called Join the Conversation. Maybe some of you filled out some of the participation forms and told us about what you wanted in the community. And then we had 2 surveys in which we talked to the community or asked the community their opinions about what their priorities were. And the top 3 priorities for the community, it was, of course, public safety, crime. The second one was youth. And guess what the third issue was? Homelessness. And so we're right on point as to meeting the needs, or as to at least answering the call to what the people who have elected us to these positions have asked us to do. The one thing that I didn't like about the first committee that I was on is that our process in engaging the community was not open. It was not an open process. It was not transparent. We didn't do anything secretive. We didn't do anything that was contrary to what you asked, but it was not transparent. And so I learned my lesson with the Antioch Youth Services Task Force, where we filmed everything. We put it on social media. We filmed our planning committee meetings. We filmed everyone we took testimony from, and we made it as transparent as possible, so that when the people on social media have so much to say, can go back to the record and see everything that we've discussed in these open forums. So is that fair? Okay. So this process is transparent. This process is to engage the community, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay? So the purpose of this committee was formed back in March, and it was led by Councilwoman Joy Motz, and then the City Council unanimously created the committee, and then they appointed myself and Councilwoman Motz to be on the committee. The process is to inform, consult with the community, involve the community, collaborate with other partners like county agencies that we had in our first public testimony that we had. We had agencies from, we had county agencies that represented the Homeless Services Division. We had the core teams. We had the county fire department. We had the hospital. Sutter Health was represented. We had a host of agencies that were there. And then, of course, to empower. I'm going to say it again, to empower. The knowledge isn't good just for me and Councilwoman Motz to know. You have to take these tools and you have to take these information and turn them into tools for advocacy. So we're doing what we call community capacity building. Right, Nicole? Because now she's advocating. She's at every meeting, and she's demanding things. And so it does us no good if we take all the information and you know not what to do with this information. Is that good? Yeah. And then you can also tell those people on Facebook that they don't know what they're talking about. So
Not everybody on Facebook is against. There's a lot of people that are supporting this effort and realize, and like we said
Right.
in the surveys, it's very clear that this is a
I
common
just-
concern within the community.
Right. I just like poking fun at my friends on Facebook. So this is a 4-part series. We've done one. This is the second one, which is a workshop / round table discussion. So later on in the agenda, we will kind of break up into small groups, and we'll be talking about some things that we learned from this first session. And then 3 and 4 are to be announced. And then we have various access points. You can come to city council meetings. You can come to these meetings. You can utilize Facebook to find all this information, and there's also on YouTube. Are we good? And then we've also incorporated comment period. So at the end of this process, if you have other comments you want to make, feel free to make them at the end, and you'll be allowed 2 to 3 minutes to make your overall comments. But we're not going to have that at the beginning because we got to get through the process first, and then we'll make time for that. All right. So that's what we've kind of done to date. In addition to the series, the 4-part series, Councilwoman Joy Motz and I have gone out and done other things outside of our committee meetings. So we have literally visited encampments. We have gone out to the river. Not all of them, but we have visited encampments and spoken to some of our unhoused residents. I have visited the San Francisco Navigation Center, and I got a tour of it, and Joy will be visiting that as well. We've done some, just to learn. This is all about learning. So we've done some things where, we've gone to some of the food bank locations to distribute food and talk to people and they come in all forms, people who are housed and unhoused. So we're being deliberate about how we want to find information and as well as take that information to the city council. And then we did a follow-up meeting with Director LaVonna Martin from Homeless Services. So we had a few additional questions because our first public hearing, some of the time was monopolized at the end. And so we needed to do a follow-up meeting with LaVonna Martin to get some answers that we have.
I think it was important to know that, and I think some of you were able to attend the first panel, but it was super informative for what we were learned about what's happening with the homeless population in our communities and within our fire departments and our police departments and our core teams and at LMC and within Antioch Unified School District. So it was just super valuable. I mean, we literally, we thought we knew, but we didn't know until we actually started, hearing from people that are working in this kind of work every single day and actually going down and talking with some of the homeless people and meeting them and having conversations about their challenges are and how they've gotten here and what their needs are and all. So I just wanted to add that this first panel was, it just really opened our eyes.
It did. So again, we heard from the county, we heard from our city, and remember from the city's standpoint, we focus on public safety. So we come at this from an enforcement side. So if it sometimes seems that the city is very heavy-handed, the fact of the matter is we have to be. And some of you have sat through that session and recognized that we have a responsibility to public health in responding to it, to encampments and the challenges that those pose. And then we have a responsibility to keep our thoroughfares open and clean, as well as private property has to be maintained at a certain standard. So you will always see the city approach it from an enforcement standpoint. The county is responsible for services, so they deal with it a little differently than we do. That does not mean that the city does not invest money. I think we invested close to $200,000 in services specifically to unhoused residents, like the food bank and other organizations. Is that fair?
I think it's fair, and I think there's obviously another thing we found out, and there's people here that are doing this work. There are a lot of organizations and people within the community that are striving to try to help with this situation, and I think what I find the challenge is there's no cohesiveness in this strategy. So everybody's working in silos and nobody's really working together. And one of the things I'm hoping that'll come out of this too is that we have a central focus where everybody can kind of plug into this, and because it is going to take a village on this. City of Antioch does not provide services. It doesn't mean that we can't be a partner in that, but it's going to have to take the nonprofits and individuals and county agencies and all of us to try to make this work.
So and this is just to kind of quickly recap, but we had some takeaways from the first series that we wanted to share. And so, Joy, did you want to talk about education and I'll ask Ron Burnell to come join us up here. Our city manager.
Our city manager.
Our great city manager.
Right.
Amen.
Yeah. And I have to applaud, Ron has taken the time to go down and meet some of our unhoused down in the downtown Antioch area. I think that was particularly enlightening also for him. One of the things the city did do was, one of the first asks was for portable restrooms and down in the downtown area close to the rail station, and the city was able to, thanks Ron, went through the process, made sure it was in a place that was going to be safe and not too close to schools, whatever, and we were able to do that just, as a kind of just to get started, a temporary measure. This is something that the homeless people really asked of us. One of the first things that they would like, this would be something that could help. So we did do that, but Lisa Perry, who was the homeless liaison for Antioch Unified School District, came to one of our panels, and I think we were all kind of taken aback when she told us there are 350 to 400 homeless students within our community. And those are actually, some that are actually unsheltered, some of them are going from family friend to family friend, they are couch surfing, they are living in cars. So this is not just a problem that affects, our veterans or seniors or people that are addicted, or it affects everybody. And it was, I think, really eye-opening to see that so many of our young people that are trying just to get through school also do not have a home. I found it really powerful, too, that Los Madonnas College, they spoke about how they know of at least 30 unhoused that are attending the community college. And something that I found was incredible is that they are kind of taking it upon themselves to really try to help these students. They are providing them resources, supplies, and they've actually opened up their athletic facilities for showers for them.
Amen.
So people, I mean, different agencies and different organizations are stepping up and really trying to help with this problem. It's not something Lavon has shared with us. I thought that was also super concerning, is that there are more people going into homelessness than there are going out. So this is a growing problem. And as we all know, this is not just in Antioch. This is almost everywhere we go, from Sacramento to Seattle to Portland to Salt Lake City to San Diego. You know, this is just across the nation. It speaks to a much bigger problem that it's taken us a while to get here. But, you know, once again, I think it's something that communities can't continue to just expect the county and to provide the services that we all, again, need to partner and step up as we try to address this issue. Anybody else you want me to talk about too? I'll speak to also Sutter Health came out, Valentina Walker. The medical costs, which we all ultimately in paying for, is just incredible. So many of them end up calling 911, which usually means that a fire engine shows up, and also another medical unit will show up. Sometimes the police department has to be there too. And they'll be taken to possibly a hospital, and they may have a stay overnight or whatever, but they're then released back into situations where they can't possibly get better. And one of the big challenges coming before hospitals is a bill was passed, SB 1152, which is forcing hospitals to have discharge plans. But hospitals are going to have a very difficult time in East County because there's actually no shelters for them to discharge them
That's
to.
right.
So this is a growing problem within our medical community. It's at great expense that we're bringing these individuals in here repeatedly over and over without actually providing them health care. Who else did you want me to speak to?
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk to some of the county agencies, and then Ron will pick up on city. And so just real quickly, some stats from the Contra Costa Fire Department. So in 2018, they had 406 outside fire calls. So that means non-structural or anything like that. They estimate that 390 were as a result of people who are experiencing homelessness. So that can be a challenge. You know, people try to stay warm or cook. We get it, but it does pose a strain on the system. They do track as we dismantle homeless encampments from one corner to the next. They do track the call volume follows the encampment. So those are some data points that they just wanted to share with us. In responding to some of the encampments, they talked about the amount of human waste, the amount of needles that are out there, and debris and rubbish and whatnot. And so that then creates personnel challenges, because now they have to go into when they respond to some of these calls, they have to go in with the biohazard uniforms and all that good stuff. So it can be a challenge. You were talking about the calls for service. They gave an example of an individual who's unhoused, but he stands at the exit of a freeway, and so because everyone is kind-hearted, he'll sometimes look like he's not present.
Yeah.
And so it requires 2 fire trucks to respond, one for the emergency and then one to block traffic for the firefighter safety. It also requires APD to respond because it's in our jurisdiction. And it also requires highway patrol to respond because it's on the freeway. In addition to that, an EMS truck then responds. So these are the cost for the crisis that we're not meeting head on is costly to every agency. The one good note that there are other things that they talked about, but not as important as the one good thing that we do have going for us is we don't necessarily have end of the line challenges. So they had 609 calls for end of line.
Bart.
This is BART, but this is of course the fire department responding to the emergency. So they had 609 calls for service at the Pittsburgh Bay Point BART station. In Antioch, in the same time period of January 2018 to April of 2019, we've had 17 calls for service. And so it turns out that some individuals, whether it's hot or cold, sometimes will unfortunately fake a medical emergency for housing.
Yes, yes they do.
And so many of these calls reflect that. And so I'm not saying that's good or bad, it's a strain on resources, but I get it. People got to do what they got to do.
You want to do the police too?
Ron's going to do the police. The core teams, basically, they're at shelters, they're at encampments, hospitals, they're on our waterways, they're at the streets, they're at the DMV, they're everywhere they can find people who are unhoused. I'm not here to debate whether or not that's true or not, because there are going to be people who have a different opinion because they're out on the streets too and they don't necessarily always meet. But that's what the core teams reported to us. Since July of 2018 to May of 2019, they have contacted 644 individuals living on the streets. 15% went to emergency shelter, not enough. 38% went to warming centers. 19 received mobile health care. 6% had to require animal services to respond, our animal services department. And 65% received emergency supplies on the street. And just as a reminder, there are 3 ways to get support from the core teams. You can call 211, walk into one of the care centers, or you can encounter a core team member out in the streets. Coco Lead Plus, they are our law enforcement diversion program here in Antioch. They have been, so they serve people who have like misdemeanors. And so rather than sending people to the courts and the prisons, we're dealing with them at home. The challenge for Coco-led police, or Health Right 360, is that in order to provide the support mechanisms to support these individuals, they need housing. And so a lot of the folks that are being referred to them by APD are being referred to them as a result of trespassing. And guess where these trespassing violations tend to come from? Those who are unhoused. So since July of 2018, and this just started last year, so these are preliminary numbers, they've had 72 referrals from APD. 53 of those referrals were, again, trespassing. Of the 72 referrals, 35 were enrolled into their programs. Of those 35, 26 were individuals who were arrested for trespassing, and 25 were identified as transient. So that's Health Right 360. So the state had this challenge with over-incarceration, and now we're going to have a challenge with people dealing with them at the local level if we don't have housing for them. So housing is critically important to some of our low-level offenses in the community. Tri-Delta Transit, they're dealing with 4 areas that are top of mind for them. This is our local bus service. 1 is on the bus, 2 is bus stop locations, 3 is their own properties and facilities throughout the county, and then of course 4 is advocacy. Their challenge is part of their decrease in ridership is a result of people who are unhoused hanging out on the buses all day. And again, they tend to see these upticks in the summer and in the winter months. Bus stop locations have become homes for people.
Yes.
And so then the city comes along and says, we can't have people living in bus stops. So then we have gone to Tri-Delta and said, knock down the shelters and knock down the trash cans, and get rid of the seating and leave the sign. And so that poses challenges to everybody.
Yes.
Because now seniors can't sit down. You don't have the shelter from the sun. So a host of issues arise when we don't think of this in a comprehensive manner. Their properties, they want to keep them clean, of course, but people set up encampments, and then Tri-Delta just can't evict people, just like the city can't just evict people, just like if someone camped out at your house, whether you like it or not, you just can't evict them. So they have to go through this long process to have people removed from their encampments. And then, of course, it's either there or it's on one of our properties or it's in somebody's private property. And then, of course, advocacy, and they're challenging us cities even stronger now to make sure that where we build development housing, where we build new development, there are services that their routes are associated with these new developments to ensure that people have access to the services that they need. Okay? So that was Tri-Delta. And the last one is the library. So they don't just lend books anymore. They serve as a warming center to accommodate those who need to be out of the cold. And they also run two programs. One where, again, they serve as a warming center, but two, they do coffees and conversations. And the core team will go there and talk about some of the services that they have, the mental health services, all that different stuff. And they have caseworkers there, and they have certain hours at the library that happens. I believe one of them is every third Thursday of the month from 1:30 to 4 o'clock. They're there. So our library is not just a repository for books. It's a repository for life too. So that's it as it regards to some of the folks that we've heard from.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Ron Burnell. I'm city manager. Privileged to work here for the city. It's great seeing many of you folks today who are my friends. So thanks for coming out and listening to this. First of all, related to the city services, specifically the police department and code enforcement. Number one, homelessness is not a crime. So that is a misconception by many folks who would like to see us arrest homeless for being folks who are homeless, unhoused, would like to see us put them in a car and drive them off somewhere else so they're not in Antioch anymore. That's just not the reality of how we deal with the situation of homelessness. Our police department in 2018 had over 2,900 events or interactions with homeless individuals, resulting in 133 arrests. So I want to put that in perspective that the large majority of our interactions do not end up in an arrest, and if it does, it's because a criminal activity has occurred that requires that. As Councilmember Thorpe said, the fire department had 390 interactions with homeless in 2018, and our code enforcement department has had hundreds of encounters with the homeless in 2018 as well. The police department has what we call the community engagement team. It's 2 police officers that work Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, and their job is to interact on a community policing standpoint, and much of their time is spent interacting with the homeless. And what that involves is getting to know the homeless, finding out their story, finding out if they need anything. Our police department works closely with the core team, which is the county team, that then provides information regarding services that an individual would be able to access if they're interested. And so they work hand in hand with each other. They also work cooperatively. Councilmember Thorpe mentioned the COCO Lead Plus program, the diversion program. They work cooperatively with those folks as well. So our police department's interest is in finding services and helping folks that are in this state of homelessness. We have a couple of police officers that I think, I'm not going to say they're always, but for the most part, I think they're pretty good to work with and pretty kind and compassionate. They also work closely with our code enforcement team, who are tasked with addressing homeless encampments or homelessness that occurs in the public right-of-way or on private property. That is, I would say, 99% of the time on a as called basis. They're not out identifying this themselves or responding to calls for service from people in the community or others. So that we're not in a proactive mode of going out and looking for folks who are unhoused and are in encampments. But to the extent we get calls that there's a situation that the community is asking us to address, we're obligated to go out and interact with those folks and try to resolve the issue as well as we can, which oftentimes, unfortunately, involves removing the encampment because of its location. So I just want to emphasize that our police department, our code enforcement officers, the core team, the county services, we all work cooperatively and interactively with each other. From the last session, it appears to me that fire is not as plugged in as they could be. They seem to be a little bit more independent and weren't aware of some of the things that were happening with the other agencies. So that might be something that we would want to look into, doing a better job of making sure that the fire department, which is the county fire services, the City of Antioch doesn't have our own fire department. It's the county that serves us. We might be able to work a little more cooperatively with them. They have 4 stations in Antioch, and so to the extent that that there's a better understanding of what we're all doing, that would be helpful, I think, in the long run. I just want to let you all know that from the standpoint of my office, I'm very interested in this subject. I think it is the biggest challenge and the most important issue that the City of Antioch is facing right now, just because it involves people. It's not about bringing more jobs, and it's not about property values going up and all of that, which everybody finds important. But this is, wow.
This is why we're the greatest city God ever created.
Why is that, Marlamar?
Because we know how to party.
So I just want to say that from my standpoint, and from those of you that I've interacted with, know that this is a very important issue to me, so I'm going to help do everything I can to bring positive solutions and try to help the neediest in our community.
Right, and if I can just, so one thing I didn't say while I was doing the overview, the purpose of the task force is to study the growing homeless crisis in Antioch, the effects of homelessness, including encampments on the community, and temporary measures to alleviate encampments until the completion of the Contra Costa County Care Center. So that's our specific task. It doesn't go beyond that. And it can't go beyond that because that's what the charge of the City Council was. We are obviously talking about other larger systemic issues to inform that, but from the standpoint of where myself and Councilman Motz are coming from, is we're specifically tasked with the alleviation of homeless encampments on our streets. And so it's going to look, I don't know what it's going to look like. That's why we need your help. So,
one thing we didn't mention was about, so many of our encampments also are around our waterways.
right.
And there's so much waste and disposal that is actually getting into our waterways and consequently into our river, into our drinking water. So this is a huge issue,
Right.
especially around the Dow wetlands in that area, and trying to keep those areas cleaned up. And also, so when we speak of a public health issue, this is a huge issue because this is going into our delta, so not only
Right.
for our drinking water, but also
Yeah.
marine life and everything else that lives out there too. So something that we have to think about.
We
And-
do.
and
The
what-
intake valve for where we draw the water is by the Red Caboose, the old Fulton shipyard, and so there's encampments around. So that's the intake valve. Just remember that. That's the intake valve.
And one of the most popular locations for homeless individuals to find a shelter is along the river. It's a good location. When it's hot, it's cooler. When it's cool, it's hot, a little bit warmer. And then also along our 3 or 4 creeks that feed into those. So we have a lot of locations that folks like to find shelter, but unfortunately, as has been said, that feeds directly into our storm drain system, feeds directly into our river and our drinking water supply.
So from here, we're gonna, not yet, not this very moment, we're gonna break into small groups, and I'll tell you exactly how we're gonna do this. But I think the best way for us to take feedback, especially from the community, is for the community members from different walks of life to talk through some of these challenges and also come up with solutions that we could possibly explore. So, but before we get to that part of the agenda, are there any questions about anything we just said? And we can spend a few minutes on answering questions.
Could you add my name to the task force, please? I want to be a part of that.
You want to be a part of our task force?
Yes.
You are already a part of the task force.
Yeah, but I was, well, you don't have me going to over there, but I need the information. I want to be contacted, so I won't miss the meeting. That's what I'm saying.
That's what we passed the list around. Did you sign the?
Right.
Yeah, but is it room for me to be on that task force? That's my question.
The task force is actually a subcommittee of the city council, so Councilmember
Is it room
Thorpe.
for me to be on that task force?
So the answer would be
To be a part of the task force. That's what I'm saying.
so the answer is no, because it's an ad hoc of the city council, and so by virtue of just being here, you're effectively part of the process. And remember, the task force ends sometime in August when we make our report. Now, we could recommend that it continue to go on because there's other things we need, or the scope of work needs to increase. But for now, it's myself and Councilwoman. But what we can look at as we formulate recommendations that we all agreed to is that maybe that the task force maybe morph into more of a work group that includes community members. But for right now, it's myself and Councilwoman Box.
She needs to sign up sheet so she can get on the list, and that way you'll be able to email her.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Will we be able to ask you questions here shortly?
Right now?
Right now.
Or should I be the first?
Ask away.
Second.
Okay, second. Would you like for me to stand or just stay seated?
If you can stand, that would be great. Or if you could actually come to this side, please, if you can. Only because we want to make sure we capture people's comments and questions. And
My name is Joe Bossman. I've been a member of Antioch for 30 years. And first of all, I appreciate what you guys are doing, okay? It's well overdue. Ron Burnell and I go back to my first application for homeless housing. Ron, do you recall how far back we go?
20 years.
Okay, so I've had 3 applications for, I have a 3-acre piece of land. It joins another 3-acre piece of land. It's across from the Tri-Delta Transit. And so I've had all these applications at a big expense with developers, and it's gone nowhere with this city. The city has not reached back to me or the developers. There's like this huge firewall that's been in place in Antioch for years. And I'm a little emotional now because I've got 20 years of wasted time dealing with this issue that has become as big as it is now. And when you guys fix or try to fix this problem, it's got to start on a level that you take care of the small problems and you keep building up. You just don't, you've got to take care of the problem, not the symptom. Okay?
Right. So I was just. Yeah. So, is it a comment or a question? Because if it's a comment, we have public comment at the end because we have to go to the small work groups, and then you can also share this in the small work group, and then when we do the report back, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So if there's a specific because right now it's about just questions of anything we've just talked about.
Okay. Well, I have some solutions in mind.
That's for
So
small
maybe
work.
I'll just sit down and let you guys know.
Well, we look forward to hearing from you at the end when we.
I've got a lot to say.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Question, and I really please, questions. Not statements or comments because we have that agendized for later. I just need questions about anything we just talked about. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, my question is just to ask you to reiterate something you said. Did you say that this task force goes through the gathering of information all the way up until the care center, and then that's the end of it?
No, that's not what I said. So I said this task force will exist. I think it's like a 6-month task force. And we're expected to report back to the city council. I anticipate that we report back in August with our recommendations. And there could be recommendations in there, I'm not saying that there are, that say, we really need to turn this maybe into we need to extend the time frame, or we need to make this a subcommittee of the city council or something. But our work is specifically to identify recommendations to alleviate encampments until the construction or until the opening of the care center.
That's part of that question. So is the care center gonna have beds?
All right.
Is it just gonna be services?
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know, the care center is something that's one day coming to East Contra Costa County. It's a care center is a warming center / care center, and it has beds and it has services. It functions somewhat of a navigation center similar to San Francisco, for the exception that San Francisco's navigation centers are shelters.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. This care center will not function in that capacity, but there will be overnight stays, and you could stay there the entire day, and then you could go to the for those who are most in need for say that again?
I'm sorry, it's gonna be built in Antioch?
The goal is to have it built
Or just in the county?
in East County somewhere, and they're looking at an Antioch specific site.
But it's approximately at least, it's 2 years probably
2
before.
to 3 years away. And so the woman in the back had her hand up.
I have 3 questions. I'm just gonna hit you with them all at once.
Well, hit me.
There's an assumption, and I apologize, but I am not a Facebooker. And so, even if I were, how would I find you on Facebook? How would I find you guys on Facebook? How would I find you on YouTube? It's not in the notes, so if you could provide that before the end of the evening, I'd appreciate that. And then in your report, I wasn't at your first meeting. Have you had any information come out about the children of our unhoused residents and what's going on with them? So that's my third.
So we'll be glad to provide the links, and as a matter of fact, we have everybody's email who signed up through Eventbrite, so I can send you the link to where we're at on Facebook and the YouTube information. And if you didn't, if you have an email, if you put your email on the sign-in sheet, we can send that to you as well.
I didn't put my email on it, but.
Well, make sure you did you RSVP on Eventbrite?
My husband did it for me, so you have his email address.
Okay.
But it was for me.
Okay, well, make sure you put your email on that list so we can get that to you. And then your second question, I think Joy can answer.
In regards to?
Children of unhoused residents.
Well, obviously this came up it's in panel 2. It was, brought up that many of our homeless are also families. Families living in cars, living in RVs. So, this is all part of, I think, the problem in Antioch. It's not just, like I said before, students or veterans or seniors, or it's just across the board. So Antioch Unified School District has a liaison who's trying to work specifically with keeping homeless students, at least providing them resources and trying to keep them in school. We have a growing family problem of individuals that are living in cars. Those they can call the 211 number. When they're brought to our attention, we bring them, we bring that forward to the county to look for placement. But the overwhelming problem is we do not have a shelter in East County. None, not one. Not in Antioch, not in Brentwood, not in Oakley, not in Pittsburgh, Bayport, there's nothing. So this is our biggest problem. East County did not used to have a significant homeless problem. Resources were going to other communities. Resources come through the county, they were going to other communities because that's where the problem was. Well, the problem is also ours. We have urban problems in suburbia now, and the money, unfortunately, the shelter and the infrastructure that we need to be able to help people has just not come along with that. And it's unfortunate, and I understand the frustration for years. Like I said, there's individuals trying to do things individually to try to help the situation. And this is why when I was elected last year, one of my main priorities was to try to bring this forward with the city council and see if there was a way that we could start as a city in helping address this issue. And that's going to take a whole bunch of people, because this is not really typically what a city would do, and we don't provide services but we're trying to work with the county and other organizations and entities to try to be able to figure out how we're going to help being part of the process and getting something out here before 2 years from now to try to help.
Right.
Oh, good, wonderful.
Okay.
I understand Terry House is the housing consultant that represents the city with the state, and she writes up the housing element.
Mhm.
Is she gonna be involved in these discussions?
She was part of our first panel. She spoke
Understood.
at our first panel about those are limited funds, unfortunately, for the proportion of unsheltered that we have now. But
I just want to clarify something.
Those are
Terry
federal
House focuses on CDBG funding, and that's it.
yeah.
The housing element is determined by ABAG,
The housing elements through the general plan process.
through the general plan process, but there are guidelines that are developed by ABAG. And we sometimes adopt them. We don't have to, but we sometimes adopt them. So the housing element is not something Terry House works on.
Who would be in charge then of getting money from the state for homeless housing?
So the county.
Contra Costa County.
So will we have a county representative?
We have had it.
Lavonna Martin. Yeah, she was at the first, she spoke too.
So
But we are working closely with her on all of this. She is partnering with
Right.
us and, and very happy that Antioch is, trying to look at addressing some of these
Okay,
issues.
so we're going to take a couple more questions and then we got to move on. You had your hand up first, and so I need and then the gentleman in the back, and then we'll get back to you. I can see who raises their hand first, and I used to be a school teacher, so I know who raised their hand first. And before you ask your question, I just want to say this. I just have to say this because we're just as frustrated as everybody in this room. Okay, we see what you see. We're your neighbors. And I've become somewhat frustrated with how people perceive us as if we're these magical people over here. We're your neighbors, and we live with you, and we experience everything. We pay the same taxes. We live in the same neighborhoods. So the frustration we understand, but understand that we're no different than you. And part of this process is learning. When I got elected, everybody thought we should. I knew all the answers. That's not how. I'm not an expert in homelessness. I'm not an expert in housing. So I take the time to learn. This process could have been behind closed doors, but we just went and found all the information that we needed and went back. We've decided to open it to the public and be transparent about how we learn, and we expect you to learn with us as well. So if we're going to work through this, understand that we're just as frustrated as you are.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, you are asking for nonprofits and people to help out the homeless. Well, me personally, being actually homeless, I can tell you, I've had somebody come and hand me a sandwich at Antioch PD, tell me to get the hell out of here. You realize that you're making a bigger mess, and then the people leave. So I don't get that one. Number two, in all those statistics you ran down, in none of them did you say over that year how many homeless people actually became housed.
I don't think, I don't know if Lavonna spoke to that.
She did. So did the court team, and it was a small amount of people.
It was a very small percentage.
Small
2%.
percentage. You're right. I did.
But the point she did make, though, is once people were actually housed, 95% of them stayed housed.
But there's not enough housing county.
There's not enough housing.
So, and this is what but I want everyone to understand, this is what we need to talk about. We will not talk about it if we don't break up into our small groups. And so part of the conversation has to be, what can the city do to alleviate homelessness, encampments on our streets? And if your recommendation is, you know what, y'all need to go buy a whole bunch of houses and get people housed, then that's your recommendation.
If you give us some money, that'll be no problem.
And if it's go give us some money, but we got to break up into our small groups so that you can give us that feedback. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Small group in it.
So the last
What can the city do to eliminate
encampments. So I'm gonna you and then the two last questions right here, because we got to break up into our small groups.
existing building that can be used for this center?
All kinds of areas downtown.
So that's what Lavon
Empty buildings.
So I get the question. and this is an important question because so Lavonna Martin has been looking at existing facilities to possibly move. Excuse me,
Save a lot of
ma'am.
money.
Excuse me. The gentleman had a question, and I need people to respect the gentleman who had a question so we can hear him. And his question was, is there an existing facility that we can use for the care center? And the answer is, the short answer is no, not yet. Lavonna has been looking. We as a city went out of our way to look at different spots as well, and the property owner said we're not interested. And Lavonna was outbid twice in 2 locations that she wanted. But where that is one key takeaway that we got from this process is that we need to triple, quadruple, whatever our efforts to either find an existing location, and that may be one of our recommendations. But that's something we gotta talk through. Ma'am, you had a question.
I have an existing.
No, I'm sorry. The 2 ladies right here had their hands up.
Oh, no, that was hers.
It was a year ago that they forgot.
Yeah, I did, you saw that. Go ahead, she called.
Just really quick, mine's is simple. So you said, did you say that they have a cooling center or warming center at the library now?
A warming center.
And it is like available for
Yeah.
the
Yes.
homeless community?
Winter nights.
Oh, winter
Wait.
night, so that's a Trinity
Yeah.
shelter and.
Right, it's a warming center, not a cooling.
And then, as a matter of fact, right now, the Nick Rodriguez Center and this community center is open for during the heat wave, and so that's open to everybody.
Where are people going? Into like the big rooms right there?
There's the lounge. There was
Oh, like the lounge, oh, okay. I see. Well, that's good.
All right.
Okay.
Rick had his hand up, and then back to you, and then that's it with the questions? We'll keep it. Rick.
I just have a
Ken, I'm sorry, not Rick. Rick Nerd.
It's Rick Nerd.
Yeah, I just have a statement. We had a meeting with Terry, and we broke down small groups and went over some of the most needed areas that we'd like to see, because money's coming. It's coming, and we want to make sure we don't want to trial and error stuff. We want to pinpoint some areas that what we need, like sanitation and housing, and we want to have places for people to go. If you call up and if you want to get clean and sober, they have places to go. So we want money to go in those areas. So we did have a big meeting to nail down some specific points that need to be addressed when this money comes.
Was that the one at the community center, at the Nick Rodriguez Center?
No, it was in Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill. So we had a similar meeting here in Antioch,
Yeah.
and the community, through this participatory process, decided that the heat money that was coming from the state, that came from former Governor Brown, was to be allocated for the care center, for the construction of the care center. And then it went to the Council on Homelessness, or the Continuum of Care, and then they officially voted to allocate the monies for the care center. Yeah. All right, last question. Yes, sir.
Joe's my name, by the way.
Joe.
So, I don't know why the city hasn't engaged me. If they know I exist, I've been a little bit of a problem in the past because I don't follow maybe all the city protocols, but never have I been engaged by the city management on a proactive basis to help out with this problem. And now the city is trying to evict 10 RV dwellers that are on a very good property that they can live on, and you're gonna add to the homeless problem with what code enforcement's doing. And nobody has contacted me, the city, to try to work through this problem once.
Okay, and that would be a great discussion point for your group. And the only thing I'll say about the city, we historically as a city have not been very good at being proactive, period, in engaging. We get that. We understand that. Those were some of our campaign points when we were running for office. So we understand that. I think the city has started to turn that. I mean, this could be a completely different issue with a completely different group of people, and they would say the exact same thing, is that the city has not been proactive in engaging. We have a strong city manager who is, I mean, he's done the tour of the encampments. He took 2 unhoused residents with him to the prayer breakfast. I mean, he's out there. He was responsible for the porta potties out. And they're open to everybody, but we know that it's going to impact those who are unhoused. So we're really trying our best. We're not trying our best. We are doing our best to engage the community in a meaningful way so that the solutions that we come up with aren't magical ideas that they're community-based solutions. And at the same time that we're building capacity so that you guys can become good advocates for whatever it is that you feel is appropriate. We may not always agree, and there's a difference. We may not always agree, but we are being more proactive in our approach.
Okay, so, what did you think?
Okay. Oh, Iris had something.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, not a question, but are we, appropriately, you might wanna do it later, but are we going to have a chance to make comments?
At the end, yes.
Okay, at the end.
So if you look at your agenda, at the end of the last agenda item is just open public comments, and Joy and I will sit there and scribe what you say, and so you'll have 2 minutes to say whatever you want. If you think I'm pretty, tell me I'm pretty. If you think I'm even prettier, tell me that I'm even prettier. Come on. Okay, so what we're about to do. So what we're about to do is I'm going to have you all count off, and I think we could probably do about
5
groups. 6 groups? Yeah, it looks like about 6 groups. 30 folks? So about 6 groups. So I'm going to start off. 1, 2. Remember your number. No, I'm good. Listen. I'm making
I'm not sure where your finger's pointing though, so.
So 1,
2,
2,
4,
5, 6. 1. Actually, you're 1. 3. 5. 6. 1. 2.
3, 4,
5.
6,
No, 1.
3.
4, 5, 6.
Yay!
1, 2.
All right. So group 1 at this corner, group 2 over here, 3 somewhere in the middle, 4 somewhere in the middle, 5 at the end, and 6 at the end.
How long do they have?
You have about 30 minutes.
Do you want me to turn the phone off?
Oh, no, this is. So this part right here, we can do this. Are you participating? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I don't mind.
I'm 1. Okay.
Once you get in your group, they give you instructions.
Number 1? Yes. I'm just out of here.
Oh, the agenda?
What I missed.
So where's 3? Yeah, I'm gonna go figure out where my
All 1. You don't want to?
Did you see the sign-in sheet?
No. Who?
Yeah,
I wasn't here. She said that I wasn't here. I missed the sign up.
all right, I'll find it for you. I'll find it for you. It's here somewhere.
I worked all day. I'm tired. I worked this flat. But praise the Lord.
All right. So I need everybody to listen. Do I need to do a 3rd grade style? If you hear my voice clap once?
Quiet!
If you hear my voice clap twice? Okay, I still got it. I still got it.
Still got it.
So.
I need to sign that sheet. Does somebody have the sign-in sheet?
The lady who gives it lady in the dress.
Okay, she got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, Nancy.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So Joy, can you grab those charts over there? Ron, can you help Joy with the pens and markers? Is everybody in a group? And I presume all of you don't know anything about each other, or maybe you know someone in your group? All right, I need you to take 2 minutes to go back to your group. And I want you to go in, I want you to, you get all my search water before I sit down? You got your search water? What are you doing? You're doing non-alcoholic instructions? Come on. So I want you to take 2 minutes, 2 minutes to just introduce yourself, but I want you to go around and tell each person in your group one thing that they would not know about you by just looking at you. 2 minutes.
Ladies first, right?
What don't we know about you? Just one calm down, throw it out.
Wait right here. Right here. How do I do that? So you didn't know that.
COT.
Are you Pastor Gary from
Yes.
I have gave
I know I gave it up on
Yeah.
Each
My name is Vicky Proctor.
That's Vicky Proctor. That's the game. And I'm the
I'll just say pass the stuff out.
Give me your note taker here. Hey, note taker. Notes up here?
If you guys want to write some notes, yeah, right here.
You're the note taker?
I'm the note taker.
Okay, what's one thing I didn't know about you? You guys, listen up here. We're going around. Listen to us talk.
I've been home, well, you know, I've been home for 10 years. You know, I'm a recovering addict. Oh, I got a job.
There you go. There you go.
Working out $100 but I got a job.
Kenny? What is it we don't know about you?
Edward.
Yeah, I had a bunch of stuff.
Joy, we need to pass these out while they...
Did you already share?
I wasn't afraid.
There were 2 over here. Are y'all confused?
Very glad that I
Heard something about you. I just seen your name many times. Jerry Collins.
All right, have you all introduced yourselves? You built community, you all like each other?
I've been serving here 3 years.
Are you ready for your charge?
Deliverance.
Make sure you put your number on the...
You used to bring those over E6 with me?
All right.
Yes.
Okay, well, I lived on E6 for 11 years.
Okay, guys, you know, I'll go over to the cancer thing.
Yeah, I lived down at the end on the dirt road, the house right there. Field and then the house.
Say one thing they don't know about you.
They don't know about me.
One thing they would know about you.
I'm born in Oakland.
I didn't know that.
Actually, I did. Yoko told me about you. That's how I learned about it. And I came to the Jeremy Camp conference.
also, I think, like, just having a shelter is like the best.
Well, I'm sure. From Martinez, I lived in Atlanta. I joined the service for 10 years. Came back and got back in 96. And I'm just kind of like a woman. I this week on my own. A lot of you know a lot of Jimmy and Laura. Really get to upgrade.
Yeah, big white house. The big white house, yeah.
Volunteer loads of places. So help out where I can.
No, they don't have a paper.
Programs or anything like that, but I do have this. I do kind of have a part in it.
All right.
Like Matthew. Matthew,
Hear my
trying to
voice,
get back
clap
over.
once.
Yeah.
Hear my voice, clap twice. All right, now I'm going to give you your charge. Are you ready for your charge? Now leave that one right there where it was joined. Just give them an extra picture. All right, so the charge is as follows. Excuse me, the charge is as follows. So I need you all to become city council people tonight. Yes, you do. You take all the money from the. There we go. No, I'm just kidding. I need you all to be city council people tonight and understand the constraints that we talked about earlier. Understanding the framework that we're not the county. Everybody say it with me. We're not the what?
We're not the county.
So we don't deliver social programs. Right? We don't deliver social programs. But we can. Juanita. Yeah, we can. These are my favorite.
Yes, I work for the county.
Thank you. But we can allocate resources to certain programs, right? Housing, shelter, everybody, shelter, from the county's perspective, is a service. It's not housing, it's a service. So I need you to think through and put your thinking caps on and help us with some solutions that you think, given the constraints of what we do, how we can alleviate encampments, in addition to how we can alleviate challenges with human waste, how we can alleviate challenges with needles and unsafe conditions for not just people who are in those encampments, but for those who serve the public good, like firefighters, police officers, EMS, emergency, first responders. And lastly, some of the challenges around debris and rubbish throughout our community. Now, if you followed along in the first series, there are creative ideas to kind of work through these things. There's as an example, there's a facility in Martinez that opens its doors for homeless individuals to do their laundry. Ken Rittner here has a mobile shower, right?
Yes.
So there are creative ways, so that's what we need you to think through, some of these creative ways, is how we as a city can alleviate encampments and some of the challenges associated with encampments, understanding the constraints that we're not the county. And understanding, what is our budget?
Our total budget? $69 million.
$69 million, and all of it, at this point, is committed. It's committed to police.
Then you don't have one.
It's committed to police, community development, code enforcement. It's committed to everything. No, we invest over $200,000 in homeless services, but it's spread out, so it doesn't have to
Out of $69 billion, you only invest $200,000.
What are we gonna do?
You got to be kidding me.
So these are, it just, most of it is committed to things that if we cut from, you would choke my neck.
Well, that's only people that are in homes. I don't know about me home personally.
No one would ever accept not having a police department, right? No one would ever accept that.
They don't have one.
Yes,
So if you only have a small portion of the budget that is allocated for homelessness, how much does it actually cost the city?
and then that's not even from the budget, it's CDBG funding, so it's not even counted as an overall. But we do invest millions in chasing people from corner to corner. That I can tell you. We invest millions in chasing people from corner to corner. So we have to find creative solutions.
But when you say chasing them to corner, is that also going up your cleaning up your cabinet?
Yes, we can spend, annually we spend about $500,000 cleaning up the big cameras.
Well, we can change that.
officers who are dedicated to our community engagement team. More focused and they do have to pay. So is that fair? Does everybody got it?
Who do you start, right?
As far as like getting housing, that's probably one of the, it's gonna be hard to find something for that. I know.
Correction. It's 128,000, not 200,000.
Oh, wow, that's even better.
I know
All these organizations that want to help us, they help us on their own. Nobody wants to kind of I get it, but you know what? It's really hard. That's how we love it. It's really why I don't want to walk with it takes the spotlight off of what I'm trying. Many times others and
I just want to. No, I Ron, it's me.
Yeah, I'm God. And for that,
I think
you guys go home to Kenny and I don't
take outside of that.
That's why I put those.
I'm like, oh, we gotta get out of the sun, we gotta go home. I get time to try to get
They tell me that they have no money to work with.
I get tired of having to go to Kenny.
I was posing it that way so that they could create a cost effective. Maybe I need to say that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt everyone for a quick second? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I hope that my constraints didn't make you feel like there was no money to play with.
128,000.
It's not, so think creatively is what I meant to say, and cost effectively.
Okay.
So it's not an endless amount of money, but maybe there's room to negotiate. That's that they were like, you know, that's the scenario we're in.
I'll get him out.
Oh, I know.
We got the Saturday down there. I don't know who does it. So those are fishes. Okay. Okay. And then Tuesday, I don't know what.
Monday through Friday.
Okay. So Wednesday, she comes out Wednesday. Okay. I come out Thursday.
They have a different model. They don't allow you to they want people to come to going out and feeding and helping people. They have a different model. Their goal is to get people off drugs, find a job, get housing. So I thought it was just to talk to the professional here who runs it. Good guy.
It'd be great if we had, there was a, within the city, we knew it.
Yeah, that's something that needs to come out of this, if nothing else, is a database of all the different folks and all the things they do, so that, whether it's a church, wherever the agency is, but
or even the county,
categorized into what they service they provide and who they are, what the contact is, and a short description of what they provide. And then that could be handed out to people on the street too, maybe on the court team, wherever the 211
or even when Lavada gets,
Right.
outreach, say,
Yeah.
it's an emergency, whatever,
Right.
So right now, nobody knows.
Right. Yeah, they just have their 2-on-1 sheet, which has all the accounting services. And some of them are faith-based, it doesn't have everything on there. So you can find out what's on Antioch, what all shows us.
Well, there's, Nicole and Ashley.
Right.
And, Ken and all of them
Yeah,
that
and we've seen it.
have a lot of contact with them,
Right.
So.
The waves come in, the waves go out, the waves come back in. So we don't serve the same part all the time. If you know people, I know that it's true. There's always and it's one God. And all we try to do because I have been
My question is, everybody sees me on YouTube, everybody, right? And they're like, wow, you're not seeing anything out of it.
Yeah, okay, I'm not
Yeah. We should walk around and give people city-specific questions.
garbage bins and toilets.
I like, find an owner that'll let people with, trailers park there. I had a 29-foot trailer given to me and I couldn't fit, couldn't find a place to get
surgeries at the Travis Airport Bay. Probably 10 years ago, there's no now in the city, and they won't let it go. So who's gonna give it?
like I said, I got it 29-foot trailer and I had to give it back to my
But the city won't leave us alone. There's going to be about 50 people, 500 inspectors that are going to be on the streets. I just moved my RV. I just graduated in the whole unit in front of the property. There were other vehicles living back there that I couldn't kick out. I lived in my trailer for over a year and 2 months when I lost my rental. No, it's right behind the property, right across the driveway. Lakeshore, there's a field, and then there's the property, and then there's Medic. It's tucked away there, it's a yard, and it's immaculate in there, there's no flaw.
That's what I told him when I went to the house. I was like, look.
It's in what more than what's the score? They just keep coming back.
So now we know that the cyclone has money for that. There's things that the city can use money for. So what's wrong with them? They talk about safety, talk about safety. I mean, those things will be.
During the summer, during the winter, it does. They said during the fire. Right, so yes, I mean, it's fine.
So is that a solution or is that not a solution?
Three of that year,
They're not here. I've been there since September 2016. So I'm also around because I had can't work and I had a disability. I needed a second call to a friend of mine who's living there already. He told me about Joe. He's like, hey man, why don't we live in a trailer and live here? And I asked him if he lived in a van. I have about 30 days off of my house. It's all
I didn't recognize you.
You're on Wilbur, you pass like.
You're all buttoned up last time I saw you.
You got the big legs for apartments?
Yes.
That's those, and then there's a field. That field, there's an adjoining property, property, and then right into the line, there's a mailbox, and there's 701. Go right in there, go back and check it out. Back in its name, but. It's the driveway right in front of yeah, so,
You need to be a evangelist. They need to name a shelter after they have more porta potties.
Right, and hire the homeless to go and take care of them.
Probably 12 to 15. 12 to 15, but there's many in this hall now because code enforcement says you gotta leave. So not letting anybody come in, but they're going out.
Why is code enforcement coming in?
He's here trying to ask those questions. And I kind of told him, I said, don't use tomorrow, go with this information gathering thing. For the city shortcomings, you can't come at them like that. But he's frustrated.
Right, the city keeps it.
He's frustrated. Because he's willing to use that property to solve these problems there. In what ways you have to ask him about that. You're homeless and you're not a problem. You're not trying to just run out and with it.
Did you see the one in San Antonio? I was just watching certain areas. Like the last 2 days, I've been passing out water, and I feel like the last 2 days, usually it's 5, but it's too hot, I can't, yeah. But I've been there for so I go there, yeah. I come in the sun, the vacuum, and I scroll, okay, I think I'm just out there, you know.
How'd you all end up in the same group? The point was to get everybody to
Anything else you can think of? Anything else?
We lost 3 people.
I would have been back sooner, except for I got one. I can unlock the car off that door. I can unlock it. I'm serious.
Get it together.
Doris, the queen, she gave me what you did not always know what to do with it.
I don't want you to say something.
Some of us are okay, some of us are okay. I'm not. I'm killing myself to try not to know what's not I wrote that my cancer over the way a couple of months. Exercise, and I don't know yet. I'm telling you, somebody gave us a 29-foot trailer for $500. We had it for a month.
You told me about that.
I had to give it back.
I couldn't find anybody that would take it on the property, nothing, because it was an 89. It was either 2 cars.
Anything past 2,000, I'll trade a horse when I take it.
And it was in bad condition, it was crazy.
Yeah, you'd be the perfect candidate for something like that. If you can hit the city and leave them alone. I mean, go to that property one day. You're welcome to walk back there. There's empty stalls waiting for people that could be living there right now and not need you.
Now it's right up on Wilbur. You're talking right down the transit, out of the station.
Right before the line, back up about 50 feet from the property, right?
I see it, yeah, behind the apartments, behind the 2-story apartments on the right-hand side.
If you were to take a ride on that, those houses, the property's on the other side of the fence, right? All the way back.
Right, Rhea.
You know who lived there for a long time?
Rhea.
Dana with the red truck? That's where he was living. That's where it is. Back in there.
Rhea lives back there too.
Yeah, Rhea's trailer is there now, and apparently she has to go.
You know Cliff, the old biker, drives that blue road there? Cliff, he has a trailer that he used to live in. So you kind of get him there where they used to live before it's
Now my trailer back.
So, but we can't take it over there. The place is spotless.
See what it is? Add up over down there, and these guys are good. The chief gets aggravated. There's that dude behind the house, and he's got a comes in, and he'll be
but it's just removing it. There's no solution.
They're not looking for a solution.
Check it out. Okay. City don't have a property. Make cancer for trailers. What about Tom Chelsea? They're trying to do that.
Talk out. Yes. No, that's a problem. They don't want to be put in. They're trying to get that property.
I know that, but what I'm saying is there's another solution out there. Who wants to do it?
And he's open to that. Yeah. He's open to that, but it's gonna work.
I don't know that.
That was just sitting here never get my property. That's bad. That's market. He wasn't ever Were you down there with Davey? Yeah, I used to bring out dog food. Remember I bring out a big bag of dog food?
This side was clean, that side was disgusting.
Yeah. And then right in the top back there, when that whole chaos there.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna use hers, and then all of a sudden, bam,
They're my dear friends, you know who's really bad down there, Jimmy and Laura.
Yeah, Dad, Randy, Gary Lane, Eddie Campbell.
Make sure you pick someone. Now listen, report back if you don't know what you want.
Daryl and Bigton. On the other side of the track, they were the only ones over there.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I started helping. Daryl remember when I started helping back in 2012. And I found out I was a veteran. My house, I was in my house, right above the North Stand. I had an extension cord going to Jenny North Stand for a year. No, the green. No, green. Then my house, I was working.
I don't. Talking about the one that took the tree out from the front.
Yes, that was my house. They sold it and I moved. That's where I moved. I had an extension cord going to my basement. Now it's taking more stand for a year.
You were the jackass next door, right?
No. I was with John.
I was like, that was Lucky Joe. Oh, yeah, he's bad. No, he wasn't.
It was bad background.
All right, about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Make sure you have your designee ready.
You did hear about the black guy that got climbed in bed and I laid in my truck, right? I learned twice how much he did like when you call up your teacher, I'll do it to you both going to the class, but I'm not
One minute. 1 minute. Thank you.
Everybody wanted to talk about what they wanted to do.
All right, let's start wrapping it up. Start wrapping it up.
Okay.
No, everyone had some pretty great suggestions, actually. We were talking a bit about...
What are you doing?
So, for report back, so we don't give people anxiety.
Because I know in and they did a smaller project, I don't know if they're still doing it, they built micro homes out of repurposed shipping.
You've done this before, Lamar.
And I would say it'd be perfect for the industrial area of the Encampment by Boulder if we could just get...
What do? You draw it out of a hat?
I think the key to success is having taught third graders before. That's really how you have to treat these sort of settings.
What do you
If
mean
you
it
say,
gives
all
them
right,
that-
someone go first,
Yeah.
and then if you pick someone, we're all gonna agree that this is the way you're gonna do it, and that's it. That's why they got rid of me from teaching the South. No,
Too logical.
thank you. All right, hit the hammer.
Yeah, she was telling me about that. I hadn't heard about that until she brought it up. It's the perfect thing to train them to build the house. All right, they get their own house and have a skill. Right.
All right, we ready to go?
Yeah, I think that is actually, it's a very viable solution to the homelessness issue right now because it doesn't require a huge investment And once you give the initial investment, it starts stimulating you're training people.
All right, boys and girls, citizens.
Boys and girls.
Don't go there. You're not teaching them. Yeah,
All right, so we are. So we're a lot behind schedule, and I apologize for that because we had some technical things. But is everybody still good?
We're still good?
So if you need to leave, you won't hurt my feelings. I understand, but I know you're going to stay because you're very committed to this important work, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our report backs. And it's going to, of course, be on Facebook. I need to go back and take notes and figure out what everybody said. And I'm sure you all followed my instructions and picked your designee. Did everybody pick their designee for their group? Don't worry, it's always the obvious person anyway. So rather than asking someone go first, we're going to just pick numbers from here. And we'll go in order. We'll start with you pick. And then this will be, so make sure you have your people ready, or your person ready. Group 6! Group 6!
You want me to hold like
You don't even have to.
Here, wait. Because when you talk,
we're gonna get serious, Lamar.
Yeah, no, everybody. You don't mind me putting my hand on.
Lamar, here.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have to hold this up like this? Can I put it on the wall?
Put it on the wall.
Okay. We don't have to go over the. What'd you ask us? The one thing that we learned about each other?
No, I was just.
Oh, okay.
We're building community as we go.
Okay. So some of our solutions, we're finding private land.
What is your name?
Oh, I'm Ashley Mahan. I represent Group 6.
And you're with what organization?
Urban Upreach. So some solutions that we came up with was finding private land where we can develop a long-term solution, and that would make us that'd be proactive versus reactive. The city could start engaging landowners to be a part of this process. And we need to protect at-risk people from with the homeless prevention, so as rent goes through the roof, we're not creating a new wave of homelessness in our community. And let's see, dumpster services to put trash in would help clean up the city as well. One of the main things is a Clean Start program, or a laundry service program, which could be funded by several businesses. It's cheaper and proactive than using abatement, and it would give people experiencing homelessness a way to clean their clothes, and it would clean up the city as well. We also want to see the transient drug dealers in the community dealt with because they're invading into neighborhoods and shopping centers, and they're not necessarily from Antioch. No. They're from everywhere. And we also want to analyze the effectiveness of the core team to see if it's in our community, it's effective versus a city program. So if we find the count of how many citizens in Antioch they come in contact with, what if we had our own city program? Would that be more effective, cost effective? And I think, and that donation centers should secure their property at night, so they're not being ruffled through.
Yeah,
vandalized. And then to see another program in the community, or to see a program in the community like Bay Area Rescue Mission, which is basically like a one-stop shop of shelter and services and counseling and job training, which would make a huge difference and take the heat off the county. And that's all.
Okay, so before you, did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
I have, I just,
Lamar.
of your feedback that's
Mhm.
on there, I saw kind of two categories. One that's more long-term, and then another that's some that are immediate.
Right.
Can you, here, take this red marker and just maybe do a dash next to the ones that are immediate?
Okay.
And if I can have you, when you say finding private
Land.
for long-term, to do what with the private land? I was like,
So to find private land to start a transitional or a housing project to get people off the streets immediately.
oh, okay.
Whether it be labeled as low income or whatever that is. To engage the landowners in the community who might be able to help this instead of help the situation instead of looking for city-owned land. So we can do, like the Clean Start program, could be, I could see that could be immediate, and that would have an immediate effect on the cleanliness in the community.
Does anyone in the audience have a question for her group that's not a part of her group?
Clean Start is a laundry service. The Bay Church provides it in Martinez, and they helps people experiencing homelessness with their laundry. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program.
That's once a month, right?
Yes,
I
third
think
Saturday.
Fellowship does that, some kind of thing like that. Fellowship Church does that at one of the local Antioch laundromats once a month. Provides quarters and stuff to
The COC?
no, Fellowship.
Oh, Fellowship does.
Oh, no, CLC.
Okay, Fellowship.
So-
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll look into that,
They
and
do
I'll
it-
call them.
The
old
church
orchard building.
Yeah.
Right.
They
Mhm.
have something they do, I believe, once a month.
Okay, then.
Where,
Okay.
Ashley, can you put red by the core team? I think that's something immediate that we can look at.
Core team
Dumpsters is something immediately.
and dumpsters. Because it would be, yeah, preventive, which would directly affect the cleanliness in our community.
Ron, did you have any questions? Oh. All right, well, thank you, Ashley. And
Okay, well, you're done, Lemon.
I'm done, Lemon. That could mean a lot of things. Yeah, leave it up there. But move it that way. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Kenny picked group 5. Maybe I need to shake this up a little more. Group 5. Come on, Nicole. Bonita. You should join her, Nicole. Go join her, Nicole. Listen, get up there.
Nice.
You gonna like me?
Yes. Do you mind if I clip that on
No,
you?
I don't mind.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead. Woo! Don't touch me like you do. Hi, my name is Vanita Brown, and I'm very excited to be here. I was in group 5 with Nicole and some wonderful people that I met. And
Are you representing a group?
no,
community?
just community. I happen to live in downtown Rivertown, Antioch, and I just happen to see a lot of it. So the first and the most important thing, I think the one that stood out the most, how much does it cost the city? And you gave us a number, and if that number is more than what you've allocated, we need to redo those funds. We need to figure that out in the budget. Like, we need more money.
So we'll talk about that.
Utilize high schools and facilities, their showers, cafeteria, etc. We can install porta potties and dumpsters and someplace safe to dispose of the needles. We can barter with laundromats for specific hours and just work something out maybe with the city or with the owners. And policy. all of this really just falls under policy. We need to advocate and go to our national, we need to go higher in the state and see what policies are affecting the homeless in our area. One that came to mind was the Stuart B. McKinney Homeless Act of 1987. And we need to declare it a national crisis, and maybe we could get more funds when we begin to legislate policy, because that HUD budget did get zeroed out.
All right, stop, because I don't want you running against me.
Okay, yeah, it got zeroed out, and so that's what we're looking at, a zero budget. Employment, mental health, safe spaces. One thing that came to mind from group 6 when you guys were talking was to employ the homeless. They need jobs. So why not pay them to pick up the trash? Like, let's get them involved. And they take ownership of it.
There's a special star by it.
And I gave you that for free. I normally charge $19.99. Okay? So let's hire the homeless. Let's hire them.
But see, I got a problem with that because.
Well, wait. Let her finish.
Okay. And then I'll take questions.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Then we'll put her in the hot seat. See if she can handle it.
Okay. And we need to have safe spaces for them to go. Maybe throughout the city, we could talk to some owners of stores and different things, and have places that they can go. Kind of like the library, where they come here when it's hot and go places when it's cold. Homeless buddy support system. One of the things that came up from a friend of mine that's in another state in Oregon, for the 5% that go back on the street, the reason that they went back is that they said that their friends were there. And so they have their own little community. And so if we came up with a system that said, like you and a buddy come off the street, now you have an incentive they'll have that friend or that person to go through that whole process with. Because they have their own community. Animal services to accommodate them. A lot of them have pets, and they don't go inside because the pets are not allowed or for whatever reason. So maybe, I don't know, partner with our animal services and give them jobs even there so they can take care of their own animals. Mobile, food, medical services. Partner with restaurants that toss out food. Maybe someone could go pick it up and, it's good food, and just deliver it to them. And come up with some type of program for families with children. We know the summer is here, and so they need to be fed and housed in school. And then we added, you may not be able to eliminate the encampments, but if you use parks and vacant properties and willing landowners to make camps more homeless friendly and keep safe and clean. Kind of like your camping, the campgrounds. Yeah. See? A light just went off.
For months, like 10 years ago, it was working great though. And it really was, like, people were like getting food for each other.
Oh, wait, so we got a few people talking at the same time. And so we want to respect each other and make sure that everyone's voice is heard. And so you were saying?
I was saying that, the cities could partner with people like, even the cities they own parks, right? Why not use some of the parks instead of it being private property? Use a park to camp these, to have the homeless be there. And make it clean and safe for them by putting dumps and things where they can dispose of needles and showers and toilets and things like that. Make it more homeless friendly.
And you can hire me. I'll run it. I'll be in charge.
So we'll talk through. Anyway, so I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Instead of having it on private property that people are pissed off because they're there, why not use
city property or city?
So I hear you. And we can talk through some of that.
I have a question, gentlemen.
I do. Well, I'm all for the dumpsters being in designated areas but we need like fencing for the because homeowners, we've tried this and homeowners abuse that. But I got this problem with paying people who actually created the problem. You know, it's like we need to encourage them to, hey, bring your garbage over here, and you won't cause such a problem for yourself.
That's true.
You know, it's
Really?
It's like clean up after yourself.
Yeah.
You think it'll be a problem to pay?
Wait. So we're running.
Okay,
we
so.
gotta make sure everyone, and then there's going to be public comments.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Was that it?
That was it. Thank you.
We're just taking feedback, and when Joy and I kind of put this together, we'll have another session where we'll kind of, before we get to council, we'll kind of talk this through with community members, and then we can debate what makes sense. Right now, there's no time for debate. Picking and choosing, that doesn't make sense. We'll do that later. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, we just take it. All right, so next group. Harry, pick someone. You gotta go to work?
I have to go to work.
Go.
I was wondering if I could.
Go. This will be whoever's next. Group 3 is next.
All right, can I clip you real quick?
Oh, okay. One. All right, one.
All right, and then, can you there? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am group number 1. My name is Vicki Proctor. I represent Extended Hands Ministry, and we have a feeding ministry. We go out every Thursday and feed the homeless population every Thursday morning between 11 and 2. And we take them clothes and hygiene kits, and we just encourage them and love on them and let them know that they're not forgotten. Okay, and our group was Gary, Pastor Gary from Golden Hills Church, Kenny, everybody knows Kenny, Thea, everyone knows Thea, and Jerry. Jerry is a veteran. Okay, a veteran.
From the Navy. Hey.
Oh, hallelujah.
That's right.
So, okay, so Thea had an idea, and I brought some, put some solutions here. More porta potties. If we have more porta potties around the city, especially close to the people that we know they have encampments or homeless people are usually stationed, then that would be a big help. But they need to be maintained. We know that. Okay. And we need to hire the unhoused people to help maintain those porta potties and or garbage bins. We talked about solutions for garbage and debris. Now, Thea brought up a very, very good response. She said that during the winter months, when the garbage bins are full, when in a homeless encampment, they want to get warm. They'll set it on fire, trying to stay warm. Everybody as a group. Number 2, or sleep in them. They sleep in the actual dumpsters, and I was surprised to hear that one. Okay, and then so like the debris and everything, you could collect all the debris, but during the winter months when it's cold, that's when they set them on fire for heat. Okay, the rest of the year I don't know what to say about that, because I believe that if we can get a place that stationary where they can stay, and those garbage bins can be stationary also, then we can hire them or give them some kind of stipend to encourage them to clean up behind themselves and pick up the garbage, and then have the city, because you have the money already allocated for the homeless people, to come in and maybe once a week or once every week and a half or something, pick up the trash, because you have the money already allocated. It doesn't say where it's supposed to go, but it can go to that little piece of information as far as cleaning up. Okay, communication with more officials. Okay, that's what we're doing now. We're communicating with one another so that we can come up with solutions and work together as a group. Another place is a particular designated, permitted area for cars, trucks, and RVs to park. The one thing that kept coming up is that when they do find a place to park, they're harassed by the police. They have to they sleep 2 or 3 hours, and then they're harassed and they have to move and they have to leave. And then they're threatened with taking their vehicles from them. And I just experienced this last Thursday. I went out to do the feeding, and one of the ladies that I normally feed, they had just taken her camper, everything.
She had no clothes, she had no shoes, she had nothing, no hygiene or anything like that. And it just so happened that we were fortunate to have everything that she needed. She got clothes, she got the hygiene, she was able to get a nice meal, and it was just a blessing for her. But that happens all the time. And to see a person, help me, Lord, when they have just gotten all their stuff taken from them, the hurt, the rejection, the pain, the hopelessness that they feel because they took everything I had. Everything. I even experienced one gentleman that had a suitcase. They took all his stuff, his money and ID and wallet was in the suitcase. Okay, so now he's got to go back through that process. And then to be safe at night, no police harassment, and it'd be an open property. That it'd be specifically earmarked for homeless, unhoused people to do, and the community cannot come in, so it need to be gated.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, questions?
Ron had a question about Tiny House Village.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Tiny House Village. Pastor Gary brought that up. On my Facebook page, I also saw several tiny house villages. They had one in San Antonio where they allotted a certain amount of land. They had their trucks, their RVs, and they had individual houses.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, and they had to maintain them. If you didn't maintain it, you couldn't stay there.
Questions? No questions? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Group 3.
Round of applause.
Okay. No permit.
At the beaches, at the beach.
I got it.
Yeah, carpet, there you go.
All right.
Why is mine a mess? I don't understand.
Okay, let me clip you
Thank
there.
you.
Okay, Bob,
Okay.
here's your time to show.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, representing Group 3 and why they put the person with the worst handwriting of all the time. But here's the deal.
Bob, are you representing a particular group?
Motocross Ministries.
Have a blessed evening, everyone.
Bye. But as far as I think what we came down to was the mayor had made a comment, Starfish, pick this one up, save that one. So, but this whole thing comes down to we're not long-term, short-term. You know, if we look long, if we focus long-term, then we're not going to get any. We're not going to make any difference at all. So one of the things is that we came up with, the biggest one is tri-level sponsoring each and every person that's homeless. And one of the things that's missing in all of these is the church. If the church is not involved, nothing happens. You know, and one of the things is that if you check out the churches in the area, most of the churches are doing a very good job with their budgeting, but they're not getting anywhere with the homeless. And so when I say tri-level sponsor, it would be a coalition between the person themselves, the city, and the church. And they would take that person and sponsor them, move them into a place, and take care of the homeless part right off the get-go. And then, like one of the ladies brought it up, use Habitat for Humanity to help train the individuals. Because if we go as a group, if we do this as a group, then it's going to get a lot more done. Unfortunately, I think in terms of, I think it's going to take some organization, you know, and that's what, quote unquote, the city does best, I hope, and being able to. But in these churches is a lot of horsepower in the churches, and so. Like Kenny said, empower people to clean up their own mess. About 2 years ago, when we got moved over to Tom Tross's property, that was the first thing we did is hand them a grocery bag and, okay, let's clean up the place. And then one of the ladies came up with a great idea, a city garden with the park. And that park would have a shower facility and maybe even some washers and dryers or something, but a place where they could actually grow their own food, because food is an issue. And so, and this is a big one because, when you have the governor come out on TV and say he's got $1 billion for the homeless problem here in California, make him, be on him. And Nicole, that would get after the governor the same way. Stay on him. Hold his feet to the fire, because part of it is if they have $1 billion, now, let's be honest, California is a big state, but with $1 billion, that ought to make a little bit of a hole in what we're looking for and keep people clean and dry. But one of the things, long term, let's bring back the mental health facilities. And there's 2 big ones. I don't know if the buildings are torn down yet. There's one in Napa and one in Santa Clara, San Jose area. And then also this one could happen really quickly. Micro homes, like everybody's seen, everybody has a shape and a size that they really love, but incentivize the builders by the city giving them tax deductions. Because one of in my history in Antioch, this city used to be a city where people got up from their house and went to work in the city proper area. That's not happening anymore. We're going out of town. And so if we do that, and these builders, granted there's not a whole bunch of space, but there's enough space that we can make a difference with this. And then one of our members, different problems. There's a lot of different problems. Some are mental, some are drugs, and the treatment should be based on those solutions and not one blanket thing to cover all of them. And the important part with that is that then I think with your starfish theory, you can cover a little bit more. So, anybody got any questions? There's an old saying where a man was walking along the beach and he saw the starfish washed up on the sand. And you take this, I could do this one. And so we're not trying to say our folks are starfish.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pick someone, Ron. 4.
I'm taking pictures.
All right, now. All right. Just keep in mind we're out of time. We're out of time.
All right. They always said the best speech was a short speech, right? Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, so my name is Vicki Robinson, and I was a part of group number 4, a dynamic group of people who came together to try to come up with some solutions to these issues. And for the issues of the encampments, one of the solutions was to lease some buildings for $1 or $500 a month that could be turned into homes for these people to stay in, and not just a shelter for them to spend the night in, to make it into some type of a living situation for them. And then for that, there was also for the encampments, and we've heard some of the things I'm going to say other people have said already, but the space for the nightly RVs and the cars and the trucks, the parking, a place for them to park that's safe, and made safe by not letting them use propane so they don't blow up the place, but a place where they can cook and eat and have meals and be in a safe environment. And then on some of the other ones, as far as the needles are concerned, maybe we need some more injection sites and some disposal sites with no fear of incarceration. We noticed in San Francisco when we went to visit the navigation centers that they had a lot of those, and they were being utilized because they had no fear of incarceration. And that's saving not only the city and from a lot of issues, but it's also saving the lives of a lot of people because they're not touching those needles. Let's see. So moving on to human waste. Again, we need some more mobile showers, some porta potties. We need some. Let me see. What else did we have for the human waste? I think that was about, some large dumpsters, but in the areas of the encampments, as someone else mentioned. The dumpsters being in the area of the encampments are probably the best places because these people will try to pick up around themselves. And if they have the areas there, they can do it. And someone else made a great, had a great suggestion when they saying, pay the homeless, pay them, give them jobs to help to do this cleanup, because that would give them money to do some things. And then as far as the encampment's concerned, if we have some sustainable housing, like for people that are already working and about to be homeless because their rent is about to go up and they're not going to be able to afford it. So we need some sustainable housing. We don't need the rent to keep going up and up and up. We can need to expedite this care and navigation centers with the beds. And then the last but not least, the debris and the rubbish. We need to, a long time ago when I was growing up in Los Angeles, the inmates used to clean up the yards, the streets, the freeways, all of that. And then what about these people who, is it the court diversion program? Instead of going to jail, they want to do community service. Well, get them out here and do some of this cleanup, because that'll help us too. And the last thing I want to say is, if we can attract some big businesses right here into our area, then we could have jobs for people right here in our area. So many people wouldn't be going out. Money would be spent in the area, and the city would have more. The city and the county would have more money to do a lot of these things that we're suggesting. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I've been speaking with the counselors several times, and you.
I think that's a question for you all.
Thank you.
Questions. We gotta have questions.
My question is that what you all is trying to do is great. I know you're trying to do what you're trying to do, but what I'm trying to do is get a place so these people can call home. Since so many of those people out there is not going to be able to be trained to go out in the communities and work. And my home is a place, my building that I've asked y'all the least to be, and I don't see why you don't want to work with me with that, is to give these people someplace they can call home. They got to have someplace that they can call home. And don't we go home and turn on our air conditioning and have a nice place to sit? This is what I want to give them.
Right. Yes. And so
Yep.
I hear you. I hear you. So we don't want to. So we don't want to debate all of this right now. We're going to get back to that at a different session. And then after we finish, everyone finishes presenting, then you can say whatever you want to say to myself and Joy. Right now, we need to get through this process here.
All right. Group 2.
Group 2.
Can I plug you? Get you? Okay. Mic on there.
I'm glad you guys changed. I was going to suggest that.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Am I speaking in this thing? Okay, so basically, all of the above. Hi, my name is Charla Andrade. Who I am doesn't matter. That's the least important thing of all this tonight. I do serve at the river. The solutions that we came up with, based upon what Lamar said, encampments, waste, drug paraphernalia, and debris. We stuck to the 4 categories, basically. Preventative items, busing 2 services, free or low-cost busing, 2 services that are in the county, so those that need help can get to the locations they need to get to, since we don't have them in Antioch. Porta potties, that would come under waste. Dumpsters, waste. Sharps containers, metal ones, attached to some buildings that can't be poured off. That would be drug paraphernalia. Or like here in this bathroom, there is a Sharps waste container. Any public building should have a Sharps waste container. And like somebody said, no risk. If they take them there and drop them off, no risk to be arrested. Because homelessness should not be arrestable. Virtual care center. And this was from Harry. This was from Ken, along with